Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And good morning and welcome to this morning HDB sharing sessions. I guess we probably have to wait for another 1 or 2 more minutes. I hope you all don't mind. Yeah, while waiting, my contact numbers you may like to take down is 9633-4883. Just in case you have any query in the futures, you can text me. I'm absolutely okay with that, no worries. But just don't expect me to reply immediately. All right, I hope this is a common understanding.
Kelvin, don't mind, you can put your number on the chat group.
Sure.
Thank you.
With that, I got to do a stop share for a short while. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
No worries. Okay, we have about 69 participants so far. All right. Yeah, I think I shall go ahead with the sharing session right now because I don't want to keep all of you waiting. Now, this is going to be quite a lengthy one. It will last probably about 2 hours. Right. In case you have any things that you want to check or ask along the way, do drop by in the chat box. All right. I don't want to interrupt the sharing sessions. There won't be any break. All right. It will take. I try my best to end by 2.5 hours. And I leave the end of the sessions for the Q&A that you might have. And if you have any special cases that you want to discuss, I'm perfectly okay. Just PM me on my number. All right, I will try to respond as soon as possible. Okay. All right, let's do the start of kickoff right now. Yep, I have the permission to start right now. Just a while. Okay, that's me. All right, my name is Kelvin Chai. Okay, today our sharing objective will be more onto the HDB transactions. All right, I will touch a bit on the loan and calculation. And of course, the forever famous HDB resale portal. Okay, and I'll touch on a bit on the CPF matters, the type of grants that's available for resale, and the types of buying schemes under the HDB resale. All right. So now the start of it, under public housings, there are different types of transactions. All right, mainly there is categorized into resale and brand new. All right, so resale is where we are already expert in. Okay, and brand new, you may ask me why we are so of interest to study about BTO and SBF and the open booking. All right, because it's not our matter of interest for simply reason because there's no commission given. Okay, I think that's the wrong concept. We need to know some function, some basic requirements about BTO flats, about SBF flats, about open booking systems and things like this so that we can converse with our customers or our prospects more professionally. All right, just for information, BTO flats and SBF flats and open bookings are all brand new flats that is from HDB Direct. All right, for qualified buyers, BTO is really the first choice, but of course, lately due to the pandemic, okay, the waiting period can be 5 years to 6 years. Okay, now some of them who couldn't wait, they may want to go for the SBF or the open booking. All right, my advice is that do take note, SBF and open booking, the price is different from BTO. All right, the price will be higher than BTO flats. Okay, so this is something you may want to take note of when you explain to your customer that, hey, how come, why should we go for BTO flats? Other than, being able to choose the first choice priority units, facings and things like this. All right, there's nothing much difference. But the fact is that the pricing is really the factor that many of them goes for BTO instead of SPF and open booking. But if time is a concern, of course, open booking will be the best, all right, because it's like almost quite immediate. Okay, you can walk in every day and choose the units on the different areas that the buyers is interested in. Okay, and of course, under brand new, we have the EC, all right. So these are all your expert in. Okay, so I will touch a bit on brand new, just for the interest. Sometimes you may be questioned of. All right. Now, just for a quick note, this open booking systems, this name has been replaced. It used to be called the reoffer of sales of balance flat. Okay. When was the name was changed to under called open booking? It was on the 4th of March 2020. Okay. This is just for your information, and so that when you narrate it with your customers, you can be more professionals. All right. Now, some basic qualifications you must take note of when for buying a brand new units, right? There must be at least one Singapore citizens, age 21 years and above. You cannot have any prior properties for the last 30 months. All right, income ceiling depending on which category of BTOs, SPF, open booking, or EC you're going to. All right, because they have different buying scheme. But in the various respect buying schemes, the income ceilings will be 7K, 14K, and 16K. Okay. Of course, like I mentioned just now, there's different buying scheme, especially for BTO flats. There will be different type of buying schemes that is really different away from our resale HDB. Okay. And of course, there will be grant eligibility, which we're going to touch on subsequently. And please take note, if your buyer is applying for a second time, okay, we call it a second timer, then there will be a resale levy taxable. All right. Some of them they call the tax, okay, is whichever you term it. Okay, so let's move on slightly further. All right, BTO flats is being offered every quarterly. All right, in the month of February, May, August, November. Okay, so you have to take note about all this. Okay, so like in this month, August, BTO flats will be opened up for sales. All right, so take note of this. Sometimes your customer may query you that, hey, do you know when is the next BTO available? All right, so of course the construction period and the collection of key, this one will have to change right now because we all know, as we all know, it's already about 5 years to 6 years. Okay, and that's why resulting in many of the resale flats being priced different right now compared to probably last year, August and before. Okay, so for those who couldn't wait, they may go for SPF. SPF is offered being on a period of twice a year. Okay, in the month of May and in the month of November. Okay, so you may want to take note about this. For open booking system is throughout the year, like I mentioned earlier. All right, with qualified paperwork ready, you can just walk into the HDB brand new department, which is on the first level HDB hub. Okay, and then fill in some application forms and things like this, and then you go for your applications from there. But do take note, like I mentioned again, other than the flats, the unit itself might not be in the choice directions, facing stacks, or whichever that this buyer may potentially face. Other than this, it's really the price. All right, it's just like a BUC, you're going for the almost completion, and you're probably the last batch of buyers. So the price will be very different. Okay, and for resale, definitely we are very well expert of it. It's anytime it's from the open market. All right, completion period, it used to be about 8 weeks. Okay, my understanding currently is close to almost like about 11 to 12 weeks. Certain cases with housing grant or slight complications that need more paperwork, it might take even to 13 or 14 weeks. All right, so this is just an estimation subject to the volume of transactions that HDB is processing for that month, for that period itself. All right. So this picture here, you may want to just take note about the step-by-step guide to buying a HDB BTO flat, just in case your customers may ask you, hi, hey, how about I want to buy a BTO flat? What's the process like? What's the applications step? Do you have a guide on it? All right, you may want to take this as a reference guide to assist your customers who have planned on that. Okay, having said that, we mentioned just now about the resale levy. All right, if your customers already have a first subsidized flat enjoyment before, all right, and now they want to go for the second subsidized flat, there is this thing called resale levy applicable. All right. So what is first subsidized flat? Okay. First subsidized flats are basically new flat from HDB. All right. Because we don't turn it just particularly BTO, because we don't know how you acquired the brand new flat from HDB. It can be from SPF, it can be from reoffer of balance flat, or previously in the 80s, in the 90s time, we don't call it BTO flats. We just call it new flat from HDB. Okay. Or on the second scenario, you may have purchased a DBSS from developer. Okay. Of course, now DBSS have stopped, no more constructions of this anymore. My understanding is Pasir Ris 1 is the last one. Okay. The DBSS is just next to White Sand MRT, the Pasir Ris MRT area. Okay. Or you may have purchased an executive condo from developer, or you may have purchased a HDB resale flat with housing grant. Now, all these four types of HDB properties, all right, is known to be subsidized flat. Okay, if any of your customers have owned this property and they intend to buy a second subsidized flat, which is basically new flat from HDB again, or any EC from developer, which the land was launched on or after the 9th of December 2013, then they got to pay a resale levy. All right, so do take note about this. Okay. Now, the resale levy, how does it calculate? Now, it's very important that you know this date, 3rd of March 2006. All right. Why? Very simple. If your customer have sold the flat before 3rd of March 2006, all right, the calculations method will be different for the unit that is similar size, similar category that was sold after 3rd of March 2006. Okay, let's take for example, if your customer owns a 4-room flat, all right, and then they have sold before 3rd of March 2006, the levy taxable is based on 22.5% multiply the selling price, all right. Then on top of that, there is a 5% per annum premium interest. Okay, so it's going to be costing a lot, assuming your seller have sold the flat in year, say 2000. All right, a 4-room flat, and it's sold, let's say, at 400,000. So it's going to be 400,000 multiplied by 22.5%. Okay, so it's almost like about close to 100,000. All right, and over these years, this number of years, okay, so it's estimated like 20 over years, you're going to have an incurrence of 5% per annum interest. Okay, and that's going to be very costly. All right. Now, similarly, if let's say this unit has not been sold before 3rd of March 2006, let's assume the same unit is sold in 2010. All right, then it's very straightforward. The unit itself, all right, will have to pay a levy of 40,000 only. Okay, and there's no interest levy in terms of like the 5% and things like this. All right, so this table chart, you may want to take note about it subsequently when your customer will ask you about resale levy. Okay, so they need not pay resale levy for the following type of flat if in case you want to intend to buy the next housing choice. All right, if you're buying again DBSS from developer, which there's no more anymore, all right, or EC from developer when the land sales was before 9th of December 2013. All right, unfortunately, there's no more such type of flat. Okay, and of course, if you buy a HDB resale flat, now you can choose not to pay the resale levy. Why? Because I'm only buying a HDB resale flat. Okay, or you're intending to buy a private residential flat, or rather a private residential unit. Okay, so all this category of housing, you do not have to pay any resale levy. All right. Okay, let's move on further and focus a bit more onto our interest, which is the resale. All right, so earlier on, we touched on a bit of buying BTO flats or a brand new flats from HDB. What are the factors that you probably have to take note of? All right, so now we come back and focus a bit on the resale. So on selling itself, all right, it's very important that you know this unit has already fulfilled the MOP. All right, MOP basically for now, most of the units are at 5 years. All right, I understand there'll be some special permissions given by HDB to owners of special cases where they appeal due to certain family reasons in particular. All right, and then they got this early release, which means they can sell before the 5 years MOP when you reach. Okay, so this is of course on special cases. Now the next special cases that I identify for HDB resale is basically the death case, the bankruptcy case, and the divorce. All right, now in selling, when you meet up any customers, it's important that you check if there's any special case involved. All right, why? Very simple. Assuming if it's a death case, all right, you can't just sell a unit that is a death, there's a death case involved before. You can't just sell in the open market as it is, just like any normal transaction. Why? Because you need to have special paperwork. All right, for example, the letter of probate. All right, and depending on whether you have will or no will. Okay, or in a area like, for example, there's a divorce case involved. Why do you need to have special paper? All right, things like you need to have court orders, you need to have interim judgments of divorce, final judgment. Okay, all these are very important documents. Okay, so without that, you can't proceed in the selling. All right, just a minute. Okay, next thing will be, of course, we have to check the resale price. All right, the resale price is somewhere that you have to check. Why? Because you need to know exactly what is the resale price of this unit in order not to miscalculate. All right. Okay, of course, next thing will be the financial calculation. Okay, financial calculation is so important that we need to know what is the proceed for the seller when the financial, when you have less of your outstanding and less of the CPF. Okay, and of course, before selling, we need to do the intent to sell. Now, intent to sell will last you for 12 months. So please take note of this. Okay, and need to check on if there's any POA case involved. If there's POA case involved, all right, you need to have the special POA paperwork ready. It probably will cost you about $200 to $300, all right, and it will take probably about 1 to 2 weeks to get it up, all right. Now, in selling, you also need to know about the ethnic group, the SPR quota, and upgrading if there's any involved. All right. So these are some of the things you need to know for selling. For buying, pretty straightforward. All right. You need to know the buyers. One of the buyers' basic qualification had to be above 21 years old. Now, do take note for SPR family group, which means both of the applicants are SPR. Okay, they need to have a 3 years validity with Singapore. All right, if not, if not, you will not be able to let go. You are not able to buy the unit. Okay, so this regulation came by on the 27th of August 2013. Okay, and for SPR family groups, there's a ABSD and there's a bank loan involved. All right, so do take note about it. Then for resale, there's a buying scheme total of 8 types. You need to know why, because for a simple reason, there is these things called qualification. Because buyer come by, sometimes may ask you about, hey, can I buy? Or me and my husband, both probably foreigner, can we buy? All right, things like this, you need to know. All right, what sort of buying schemes can they categorize into? All right, for housing resale, there is grant also. All right, there's 6 types of grant. And do take note for housing resale, HDB resale, grant is only offered when the buyer is on the first subsidized flat only. All right, first subsidized flat. I will elaborate more further subsequently. All right, then of course for loan wise, you can take a HDB loan, bank loan, or no loan. And you need to do an intent to buy. Just like intent to sell, it will last you for 12 months. All right. Now, before you issue OTP for buyers who's taking a HDB loan, you must ensure that the buyer have already qualified with a HLE settled. All right. Else, you cannot settle OTP to buyers who are asking with HDB loan. This is something you may have to take note, and I will elaborate subsequently again. All right. And of course, there'll be ethnic group, SPR, and upgradings involved. Okay. All right. So things like this you have to take note of. Now, the ethnic group SPR quota, all this is not based on the date of you issue option. Okay, it's based on the date of when you submit resale application. Okay, so you must take note of these things very importantly. Okay, Then, of course, the home loan, the HDB loan and the bank loan is quite straightforward. You just read through will do. All right, for rental, the next thing, do take note that HDB allows rental for whole unit or room rental. All right, for whole unit, basically, you need to be a SC family. You need to fulfill a MOP first. Okay, and just like selling, whole unit rental can be provided with special reasons given. Okay. All right, then there is a NC quota also. All right, non-citizens quota. All right, then the room rental wise, there is this open out for 3 rooms. As long as you have 3 rooms rentals, 3 rooms flat units rentals, it can be done, no issue. All right, that means 3 room, 4 room, 5 rooms can be done, no problem. But owner must stay in, and there's no MOP required. Okay, and it's for SC and SPR family groups, no issue. All right, so these are some things you may want to take note of. The lease is for minimum of 6 months. Okay, and you can go on with 2 years lease if, let's say, it's a non-Malaysian tenant, and if it's a SC or Malaysia tenant, you can go all the way for 3 years. Okay, and of course, stamping and submission is required. All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, my apologies. I got to stop for a short while because I got to answer a very urgent call. All right, just give me about 2 to 3 minutes because I actually got a very urgent call. Supposed to be at 1 p.m., but I think the buyer is around here. Just give me about 2 minutes, and my apologies for this. I'll come back shortly. Okay. Okay, my apologies to all because I have actually a handover for my completion, HDB completion this morning. So I already passed the key to the buyer, but unfortunately they couldn't open the door. So sorry, I managed to get it up right now running. Okay, let's move on. Okay, income ceiling. Okay, income ceiling is very critical when you qualify for buyers to buy HDB flats, taking HDB loans, buying EC. All right. So we need to know in this period of 11 September 2019, okay, there were some changes to the income ceiling. Okay, before the period of 11 September 2019, the family's income ceiling used to be 12,000, but with that period, the changes was actually changed to $14,000. And for singles, it's usually half the amount. All right. So instead of 12,000 become 14,000, instead of 6,000 it become 7,000. And for some of you who are expert in doing EC, you know, it used to be $14,000. Now it goes to $16,000. All right. But I want all of us here to take note of one thing. Okay. And the thing is that whenever there's a change in terms of income ceiling, all right, it will affect three items. All right. These are the three items that will be affected. Okay. Say, for example, there's an income ceiling change again in 2021. All right. Sometimes today in September again. All right. What will it affect? It will affect the flats from HDB. That means the BTO, the sales of balance flat, and also the reoffer of balance flat. Okay. And the housing grant. Okay. Because of the minimum incomes qualification. Okay. And also about the HLE application. Okay. These are the three things you need to know. All right, when you come to these flat applications with income ceilings changes. All right. Okay, coming to the maximum number of tenants and occupants that need to be qualification. Okay. Now, if let's say you're renting off a flat, okay, for 1 and 2 rooms flat, the maximum number of tenants will be 4. Okay, for 3-room flat, the maximum number of tenants will be 6 allowed. For 4-room and bigger unit, the maximum tenants allowed is 6. Okay. For renting of bedrooms, please take note now. Now, for 1 room and 2 rooms HDB flats, you're not allowed to rent out the bedrooms. For a 3-room flat, you can rent out only 1 bedroom. And for 1 bedroom, all right, the maximum number of applicants, including the owners, cannot be more than 6. Okay. Now, for 4 bedrooms and bigger units, you can only rent out maximum 2 bedrooms. All right. And you cannot have maximum number of 6 packs inside the unit, including the owner. All right. So take note about all this. Okay. Next thing you have to take note of is that these are some of the tenants' eligibility to rent out the whole unit or bedroom. Okay. But I want you to take note of only one special thing. Is about this. Only bedrooms that is originally constructed by HDB can be rented out. All right. Now this applies to those flats that has been upgraded with an extra room behind. All right. If you can recall, there are some HDB flats, say in Toa Payoh, in Marine Parade, in older estates. There are some extra rooms that's been going through the MUP period last time, and they have these extra rooms that have been constructed behind. All right. Then now, the thing is that you cannot rent out these type of rooms. Only when you buy the HDB unit direct, right? Okay, that kind of rooms can be rented out, not the small room behind. Okay, so this is something probably you may take note of. Now, next question. What are the must-have information sellers needs to prepare for HDB financial calculation, and where to find it? All right, you got to ask seller for the SingPass to log into HDB My Homepage service to check. All right, and also to check on what? The outstanding loan with HDB. All right, the outstanding upgrading cost and levy, if applicable. All right, and the ownership and MOP confirmation. Okay, so all this information on under my home page in the HDB, this website, you can find when you have the seller's SingPass. All right. Now, of course, there will be some sellers who are owning with bank loan. All right. They do not have the HDB loan. They take a bank loan. Okay. Then what can you do? Very easy. Either you log into the e-service with the bank to check the outstanding or the monthly statement. All right. Then ask seller for SingPass to log on to the CPF, my CPF online to check also on the CPF usage that this unit has occurred. Basically, is about the amount of CPF they have put in for this particular unit, plus don't forget the accrued interest. All right. Okay, next thing, of course, we have to do financial calculation using the HDB CMA as reference for sales price. Okay, and check, remember again, check for any special cases. Okay. Now, this is a very hypothetical financial calculations for seller. All right. Now, these calculation methods will be very different from the one that usually we do. All right. Sales price, less of outstanding, less of CPF use plus accrued interest, and that is the sales proceed. That is very straightforward type. All right, and that is usually used for flat that is, let's say, brand new BTO flats that turn MOP, whereby they do not have any upgradings levy or upgrading costs done before. All right, now that is okay if you are using on the brand new units. But if you are selling very old units, all right, flats that is on an older generation type, then you have to be very careful already, all right, because of the upgrading levy and the upgrading costs. Understand? So to check on the upgrading cost and upgrading levy, all right, you can always Google and check the inquiry status of HDB upgradings and the estate renewal program. This will be good for you to check on the status of this. Okay. Next thing, you may want to get this QR code to go in direct to do a sales proceed calculation for your seller. All right, instead of just using the straightforward 4 lines, which is very common to many of us we use for those newer flats. All right. Okay, next thing, bank loan and HDB loans. I know many of you are already expert, you know about these things, right? I won't go through too much of it, but I just want to express one thing to take note of when you go for bank loan, although the interest rate is low nowadays. All right, do take note of something which two things which I'm going to share subsequently. Okay, first thing to share is that from HDB loan to bank loan, you can do a refinancing. All right, or repricing, some of them we call it if it's from the same bank. But if it's from the bank loan to HDB loan, all right, you cannot do any refinancing, which means if let's say your sellers currently is a HDB loan, all right, then you want to change to a bank loan. Yes, you can do a refinancing with a bank. But if it's a bank loan currently, and you want to go back to HDB loan, all right, for refinancing, maybe one day the HDB loan is, the interest rate is so cheap, all right, you can't do that. So please understand this thing, the first thing about bank loan, all right? And the second thing about bank loan, I will touch on when I come to the CPF portion, okay? So do take note in mind when you take bank loan, what will happen, all right? Okay, next thing, this is a chart of the past of the CPF interest that has been happening since 1987 to 2017. Don't ever thought that the interest rate will be very low at 1.0% all the while. All right, it can fluctuate. All right. Okay, this is the applications process for the HDB loan. Okay, now sometimes you may be required to check with HDB how to do, maybe checked by your customers who want to apply for HDB loan, how to go about it. All right, you have to go to this page called hdb.gov.sg/HLE apply, and then get your paperwork ready. All right, SIM-pass ready and things like this. The whole application process may take about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. All right, now before you apply, you may want to take further note that if the buyer is having a regular monthly CPF contribution, you need to meet the following criteria, which is, if let's say they have a basic salary, you have to have a 3 months continuously working. If they have a variable salary, you will be based on 6 months of 6 months of continuously employment. Okay, but for let's say your buyer do not have a contribution of CPF, then there will be a bit more stringent in their criteria for HLE application. Basically, you must be continuously employed on the trade for at least 6 months, and you must have a good credit standing, and you must show even your bank book to HDB when they require it to show that you have sufficient funds in it. All right, so this is something probably you may have to take note of. Okay, this is the ever famous HDB resale portals that come into action from 1st of January 2018. All right. This resale portal is not just only for buyer or seller to register the intent to buy or intent to sell. It is also for the administrator, executor, or public trustee when they want to register the intention of sell, all right, or a non-resident administrator or executor. Okay. Further to that, the spouse, be it the buyer's spouse or the seller's spouse, who is not the owners, that means not the applicant status, they need to do the acknowledgement through this resale portal also. And last but not least, is parents or child who is applying for the proximity housing grant. You need to come to this portal here to do acknowledgement also. All right. So don't get mistaken that this resale portal is only purely for buyer or seller to do their registration or intend to buy or intend to sell. Okay. And for information, this resale portal come into action from the 1st of January 2018. Okay. You need to have the this SingPass of the respective applicants, okay, in order to be able to log in. You can't use agents SingPass to log in. You can only see probably your own property if you own a HDB, right? So once you log in, you'll see something like this, all right? Then, of course, I will touch on the intent to sell first. Okay, intent to sell, there will be total of 6 steps, step 1 to 6. Now, why we number it, okay, for your information, when we number it, it's because your seller or subsequently later on your buyer will tell you that, hey, Kelvin, I'm in step number 3, I'm in step number 4. But if you're not too sure what does it mean by step 1 or step 2 or step 3, step 4, then there will be some miscommunication. All right. Okay. Now this is the actual page of how it looks like, the selling process. You'll see step 1, then step 2, and subsequently all the way to step 6. Okay. Now I come back to step number 1. When you do the registration for intent to sell, all right, of course, you have to key in the seller's name respectively. If let's say you have 2 owners, you have to key in 2, 3 owners, you have to key in 3. All right, but you can use either one of them, the SingPass, to log on to do this intent to sell. All right, now upon successfully doing the intent to sell, there's few things you need to take note. All right, things like the ethnic group, the size of the property, the age of the property is so important. All right, that is being reflected under the step number 1, registration of intent to sell. So you have to use that information, all right, correctly. Do not go and check with other portals about the size of this estimated how much. All right, this intent to sell will shows you exactly. Okay, and there's 2 advisory after you've done the selling process, the intent to sell. There's 2 advisory that is very important, and I can guarantee you, you probably will not have read it if you have done it before the intent to sell. These 2 advisory is basically, first, seller stamp duty. All right, don't be shocked, HDB, there is seller stamp duty. All right, so you need to check all the owners, ensure that they have properly stay there for at least more than the seller stamp duties period of requirement. Okay, another advisory after you've done the registration of intent to sell is the ethnic quota. All right, do take note about this. Okay, now if let's say the seller is a DIY seller, they will do the submissions of resale application through here after successfully exercise options and things like this. But if let's say it's with agent representative, that means most of the time is by us. All right, then what you can do, you just scan this QR code and proceed to do the resale application on behalf of the seller. All right. Okay, this is so much so for about the intent to sell. Okay, coming to intent to buy, it's almost similar. It's just that there are 3 other steps additional. In seller's intent to sell, there is only 6 steps, but for intent to buy, there are total 9 steps. So I hope all of us here can remember the steps 1, 2, 3, 4. What does it recalls to? All right. So this is an actual screenshot of the step 1 to 9 for HDB intent to buy. Okay. Likewise, most of the buyer who are DIY nowadays, okay, after issue options and things like this, all right, they'll go to step number 4 to do the request for value. And once done, exercise and things like this, when they are ready to do the submission, they will come back to this resale portal, intend to buy, to do the step number 5 to do the submission of resale application. Now, if they are represented by agent, that means there's a buyer agent. Of course, buyer agent can scan this QR code and do the submission for value request and resale applications on behalf. All right. Okay, this chart is done by myself. All right, it's a guideline for the timeline when you issue the HDB options to the day of completion. What can the seller and buyer expect? All right, you can read through it. But there's one thing I want all of us to take note is that on the day of submission, all right, everything is subject to validity. Okay, basically the ethnic quota, SPR quota, HLE, bank loan, value report, court order. These are some of the examples of documents that have to be valid on the day of submit, not based on the option period. Okay, for example, you may have entered an option in July, whereby a Chinese can buy a minority race group unit. But on August 1st, you were shocked to say that, how come the change in the quota? All right, but you say, hey, I already entered into option. Okay, so if you check correctly on the ethnic race quota, when you check with HDB, when you key in the postal code and things like this, look at the bottom message that HDB reply. Okay, this ethnic check quota is valid on the month of July when you submit your resale application, not in the time in July when you submit, when you enter into option to purchase. All right, this is something you have to take note of. Okay, so other than that, during the resale application, you will receive the acceptance letter, technical inspection, all this step by step I already show you to here, so you can probably explain to your seller. And on completions, what are the guided things, not 100%, but at least 80% is stated over here. All right, so I hope this timeline can help you a bit here and there. Okay, I'm touching on the CPF matters right now. All right, so on CPF related issues on usage, housing grant, valuation limit, withdrawal limit, about the new policy, about the accrued interest and selling at loss, what are all this about? All right, so okay, first thing first, your CPF that is in the buyer's account, in the ordinary account rather, all right, can be used for stamp duties and legal costs, and can be used for down payment, home protections insurance for HDB units, and of course can be servicing the housing loan taken for the property purchase. And for those who are expert in doing private property, of course you can use it, for the private properties that is under constructions already on the purchase resale. All right. Okay, but please take note, whatever CPF that you have used for the down payment, the money installment, the housing grants that you use, you have to return back, and on top of that, you have to return with the accrued interest. All right, so this is something you have to take note. The initial down payment, the money down payment, any housing grants that you receive as a buyer, all right, you got to return plus the accrued interest. All right, so it's not going to be just you can use happily and then forget about it. Okay, there are various housing grants for BTOs, for resales, for EC. All right, in general, for BTOs, there is enhanced housing grant. All right, for the interest of a genuine case of BTO. But of course, there will be different type of housing grant for different families application. Those like step-up grant for families who are very challenging in terms of their incomes and things like this. That one I did not elaborate further because that is not in our scope of interest. All right, in January for BTO flat, you only have enhanced housing grant. You cannot have more than an income of $9,000, and you can enjoy a grant amount of 5,000 to 80,000 subjective to your income. All right. For resale, you will have first of all the family grant, then you come to enhanced housing grant, then you come to proximity housing grant. All right. Again, there is income ceiling guidance. Okay. So these are some things you probably have to take note of. For EC, there's purely only family grant. Your income ceiling for qualification of housing grant cannot be more than $12,000. Although the income ceiling for EC to purchase is $14,000. All right. But for grant applications, you cannot be more than $12,000. And the amount of disbursement of grant will be 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, subjective to your income ceiling. All right. Now, having understand about the different category of housing grant, I need to explain a bit more on the eligibility. All right. Now, most of us will probably known very well about these four, the first four eligibility. That means you must be a first timer. You must be a Singapore citizen to receive the housing grant. Income ceiling, there will be various depending on what sort of income you are going to and category of purchase. All right, you mustn't have any prior property for the last 30 months except for proximity housing grant. All right. Okay, sorry about that now, my writing a bit back. Okay, then the next thing I need to explain this next four, which is so critical. All right, the lease balance must be at least 20 years above. Of course, you may say that, hey, there's no Singapore property, HDB, most of them have not reached to this level yet. Yes, I know, no issue. All right, at this moment. All right, and you must be 2 room or bigger. Okay, but this thing here is something probably a lot of us might have mistaken or may face a challenge in, especially with DIY buyer who doesn't want to release too much information to you. And the thing is, applicant must not have cancelled the sales exercise booking, all right, from March 2012 onwards, which means, for example, if this DIY buyer have chosen a BTO flats and with the recent news that they're going to wait additional 1 or 2 more years, and they say that, hey, I give up, I cancel my exercise booking, all right, I forfeit some money, all right, there will be a 1-year debarment for them when they come to resale purchase. Okay, that means to say that they can buy resale flat, no issue. But for a period of when they have canceled the exercise program, all right, for the next 12 months, in case they buy a resale flat, they are not allowed to apply for housing grant subsidy. All right, they have to wait for the next, after the 12 months over, then you can apply for housing grant subsidies. All right, so now I understand lately there are a lot of DIY buyers who came by, especially you may want to a bit capo and ask, have you applied for any sales exercise BTO flat before and cancelled? All right, and if they say yes, all right, then ask them next question, when was it? Okay, if it's still within the 12 months period, then you may have to warn them that the grant may not be eligible. Okay, now next thing also, if the resale flat has already been announced with SIRS, all right, there will be no housing grant for the buyers who come and buy this SIRS product. Okay, so do take note about that. Nah? Now, grant is purely for CPF top-up. It's not a cash top-up. All right, and it can only be used for down payment and principal payment. All right, it cannot be used for miscellaneous costs like your stamp duty, your insurance, all right, things like this. So if you want to buy, sorry, if you want to use grant for stamp duties or insurance calculation, then you'll be in the wrong already. All right. So for example, this husband and wife do not have any CPF, zero amount, for example. But they told you that, hey, I can receive about 90K housing grant. So everything will be grant. Everything I can use my CPF. All right. So don't be fooled by this. Ask them further. All right. Do you have any ordinary CPF to cover for your stamp fees and insurance? If not, then you have to come out in hard cash, although you have some CPF housing grant given. All right. So these are some of the things you may have to take note of. All right. This is a hypothetical way of deductions for CPF. All right. HDB once receive your applications and check on your CPF account. If you have any CPF in the ordinary account, the first charge will go to miscellaneous costs first. It will not go to your initial down payment or principal payment. All right. It will go to your miscellaneous costs to settle the stamp fees, home protection insurance, or legal costs. Okay. So if your ordinary account CPF is not sufficient to cover this, then you have to use cash to do the top up. You cannot use the grant. All right. Next, your cash payment involvement for COV or any top up can only use cash to do so. You cannot use housing grant to do so. All right. So this is the portion, the initial down payment, which is 10% or the 20% for the bank loan. This is the portion whereby you can use the grant and the ordinary CPF or cash to do so. And you have surplus after covering the initial down payment, whatever surplus you can go to lower your principal payment. All right, this is how the distribution of CPF ordinary and housing grant works. All right. Okay, the various type of housing grant I mentioned in the start, there are 6 in total. All right, let's study one by one. Okay, but before I move on, never guarantee with buyer that the housing grant is a for sure can get. All right, never do so, please. All right, never tell your buyer that, hey, based on what you have told me, all right, you are qualified for this amount, that amount. Never say that. okay, because it's going to be eventually subjected to HDB approval. All right. Okay, the first grant, family grant. Depending on what sort of room size you're buying, if you're buying a 4-room or smaller, all right, the buyer will receive up to $50,000 housing grant. If they choose to buy a 5-room or bigger, like for example, the executive apartment or mansionette, they will receive a $40,000 housing grant. Okay, so this is something you have to take note of. Housing grant for family is either 50,000 or 40,000, subjective to the size of the property. All right. And if let's say, for example, this family, all right, intending to buy a 4-room and take a $50,000 grant, but the family is made up of a SC and an SPR, all right, that means a Singapore citizens and an SPR family. Probably the husband is an SC, for example, the spouse may be a SPR. The grant amount will be reduced by $10,000. All right, but if the citizens, sorry, they can apply for a citizens top-up subsequently if this SPR turns to become an SC. All right, so this is more for the family grant distribution, how it works. Next, single grant. Single grant works almost similar like family grant. It's just that it's a 50% of it. All right, let's study a bit more. If a buyer buying under single, all right, wanted to take a single grant and choose to buy a 3-room flat or 4-room flat, okay, he or she can choose to take this $25,000. But if he or she choose to buy a 5-room flat, okay, then the maximum amount is only $20,000. All right. If this single were to choose to buy even bigger flat like executive apartment or mansionette, there will be no housing grant given to this single application. All right. So do take note, single grant is only for 5-room and below. Okay, not for executive apartment. All right. Unlike in the family grant, you can go all the way to to the executive apartment or mansionette. It's a bit different. All right. Okay, enhanced housing grant. Enhanced housing grant is on top of family grant. All right. So for qualified families, income not more than $9,000, they can apply for this. But do take note of this regulation here. All right. Enhanced housing grant is applicable to household buying a flat with remaining lease that can cover the youngest buyer and spouse to the age of 95. All right. Otherwise, they will enjoy only a prorated enhanced housing grant. Okay, and to qualify for enhanced housing grant, this family have to be continuously working for the for the last 12 months. All right, this is something additional. Okay, so let's take a look on the distribution of housing grant. Say, for example, this family, average family income is about 5,001 to 5,005. They will qualify to receive a $40,000 housing grant. All right, and this is subject to the coverage of up to 95 years old. Okay, so if the this is a single, for example, all right, single is always 50% of the family. All right, so if you're single, the income group is around 2,501 to 2,750. They will receive $20,000. It's basically 50% of what the family will be receiving. All right. Okay, proximity housing grant, which is very popular. Now, this proximity housing grant works even if, let's say, you own a private property and now you're sold already, and you so-called change to be own a HDB unit and stay near to the parents. All right, you can also apply for this proximity housing grant. Or in a scenario, for example, this buyer coming by is earning more than the $14,000 housing grant, $14,000 income ceiling. All right, doesn't matter. They can also apply for this proximity housing grant. All right, this is the only grant that is very relaxed as long as you stay near to the parents. All right, so it works in two ways. Either you stay with your parents together inside your unit, you'll receive a 30K housing grant. All right, if not, you will stay near to the parents, which is within 4-kilometer mark, you will receive a $20,000 housing grant. All right. So for singles, it's basically half of the amount. That's all. All right. This is how proximity housing grant work. Okay, half housing grant. Earlier we mentioned that this family grant. Okay, now let's say for example, a family grant, let's say for example in a scenario whereby the first timer Singapore citizens applicant whose spouse, whose spouse or spouse to be have previously enjoyed before housing subsidies. All right, now this person is going to marry this new spouse. All right, but because this new spouse have ever enjoyed housing subsidies from the previous marriage, for example, but this husband probably say have not enjoyed before because he has been remain a single all the while. Now they start on with a family, all right, but because this person have not enjoyed before, he can apply for half housing grant. All right, it's just like a single grant, exactly just like a single grant, but it's half the amount. All right, so instead of family who enjoy a $50,000 for a 2-room to 4-room purchase, he will enjoy $25,000. Okay, and for let's say they go and buy a 5-room or bigger flat, this person can enjoy a $20,000 housing grant subsidy. Okay, this is how what we call half housing grant. Okay. Citizen top-up grant, remember earlier we mentioned about, let's say a family that have Singapore citizens and SPR, they are not allowed to take the full grant amount of $50,000. Okay, they got to less of $10,000 and they can ask for top-up when in the condition that the spouse, all right, become a Singapore citizen status, or the family, have a child that is born to become a Singapore citizens. All right. So these are some things that you may want to take note of. And there is a timeline once they turn to become a Singapore citizens. All right. You must submit your applications within 6 months, all right, to ask for this citizens top up to the HDB branch office. Okay. Now, if you have surpassed the 6 months, then I'm afraid to say there's no more any more housing grant top up for this family. All right. Okay, a little bit more about housing grant, how it works. All right, if this scenario, okay, whereby the first flat is a HDB resale with housing grant. After MOP, all right, they buy a HDB resale flat. Okay, and after the HDB resale flat turns MOP, they go and buy a BTO flat this time around. All right, this way it works perfectly, no problem. All you need is that the customer got to pay this resale levy subjective to this flat. What was the size and when was it sold? All right, this is very straightforward and clear. On another scenario, again, same thing. The first subsidized flat is a HDB resale with grant. After MOP, they sold and they decided to buy a HDB resale flat. And this resale flat, say 5 years later, matured, they sold. And they buy again another resale flat. All right. And this time now they heard that the resale flat got even better housing grant, the enhanced housing grant or whatever, new housing grant. All right. They are not allowed to apply other than only the PHG, the proximity housing grant. So they are not qualified to take any more family grant or enhanced housing grant, but they can take PHG, no problem. All right. So they can't take, this way they can't do so. Another scenario, if let's say the customer owns a BTO flats, for example, in Punggol, they sold and they bought maybe an Hougang resale flat. After 5 years later, they turn MOP, okay, they buy again another resale flat. And this time now they tell you that, hey, Kelvin, I have never enjoyed any HDB resale flat with housing grant. Can I take? The answer is no, you cannot. All right, but good news is that there is only PHG that you can apply for. All right. So this is something probably you just want to take note in case any of your customer were to ask you, how does the grant distribution works? All right. Okay, some simple questions. All right. Peter and Jane. Peter is SC, Jane is SPR, planning to get married soon and would like to purchase a HDB 4-room flat. Their combined fixed income is 7,000 and they intend to have their parents to stay in together. Can you advise the amount of grant eligible? All right, simple exercise. Family grant will be $40,000. Why? Because rightfully they are supposed to take 50,000, but because Jane, the spouse, is an SPR, there's a $10,000 reduction. All right, Then there's this enhanced housing grant, which they are eligible because their income is $7,000. So they have additional $25,000 to the pocket. And then they have this, because they're going to have the parents staying, okay, they have the proximity housing grant of $30,000. So all in all, they have $95,000. Okay, so I hope this can explain a bit further to what we have studied just now. All right, another scenario, a bit more, slightly more complicated. Mr. and Mrs. Lim planning to upgrade from their just MOP BTO HDB 3-room flat to a HDB 4-room resale flat. The combined fixed money income is $16,000, and they intend to have their parents to stay in together. All right, their parents currently owns a prior property. Can you advise if they are eligible for any housing grants? And what if they qualify, and what will be the amount like? Okay, so let's study further. Family housing grant for sure will be zero because why? They already taken a BTO flat before. All right, housing grant will be zero again. Why? Because their income is more than the minimum mark of $9,000. All right, proximity housing grant, yes, luckily they qualify $30,000 because the parents will be staying in together with them. So all in all, they take $30,000. All right, but on condition, the parents' prior property must sell away within 6 months upon completion. All right, so these are some examples to illustrate what we have studied about the housing grant earlier. Okay, we come to the last portion of the CPF. Can you use your CPF to pay your resale HDB loan all the way? Answer is no. All right, let's study why. All right, there's this two word I want you all to pick up. It's called the CPF and withdrawal limit. All right, sorry, my mistake. It's CPF valuation and withdrawal limit. All right, what does it mean? Now, when we purchase any housing unit, there's always a purchase price and there's always a valuation. All right, so the valuation limit is based on the lower of purchase price or valuation. And in our this scenario is $500,000. All right, because 500,000 is the purchase price, not the valuation, and it's the lower of both. All right, so your valuation limit is up to $500,000. Okay, which means you can use your CPF in the ordinary account up to $500,000 for this property. All right, now because there is a factor of interest rate for the mortgage, over a certain long period, you have been paying and paying and paying. All right, but they will come to a point that, how come I already used up 500,000 and I still got outstanding loan? Correct? Why? Because very simple. Every month when you pay the money installment, say $2,000, almost half of it will go to the mortgage interest payment, not to your principal payment. All right. So that means to say that even after you have touched on using the limit of 500,000, there will be some outstanding loan still being carried over. All right. But how? I still have a lot of CPF in my ordinary account. Do you mean I cannot use it? All right. The answer is yes, you can still use it. The next limit, we call it the withdrawal limit. Withdrawal limit will be the last one, and it's 120% of valuation limit. So in this example, is 600,000. That means you have extra $100,000 to utilize. Okay, but before you utilize, all right, you must satisfy either of these conditions depending on the age of the buyer. If the buyer's age is below 55 years old, the special account and the ordinary account, you must be more than your basic retirement sum. All right, and upon that, anything more than the basic retirement sum, then you can use to continue to pay your money installment up to additional of $100,000 in our example. All right, but if you are 55 years and above, okay, what will happen? You will have to satisfy by having your retirement account plus a special account plus your ordinary account must be more than your basic retirement sum. Then you can use the additional of the up to 120%, which we call it the withdrawal limit. Okay, so I hope all of you here are clear. All right, so if you're using on your CPF contribution for your housing loan, please take note not all properties can use CPF to pay up all the way. All right, but is it all property will be affected? The answer is no. All right, so let's take a look further. What are the properties that will be affected and what are the properties that is not affected? All right, first thing first, no limit. That means they will not be affected by valuation or withdrawal limit. When on a scenario that you're buying a HDB new flat using HDB loan. So you got no worries about what is withdrawal limit or the valuation limit. You don't have to bother. All right. But if you are buying a HDB resale flat using a HDB loan, all right, then you got to worry about when you hit 100%, which is the valuation limit, you got to satisfy the condition of the BRS depending on the age of 55 or above 55. All right. Once you accepted the amount above BRS, you can happily continue to pay using your CPF. There is no restriction of withdrawal limit. You can use all the way as long as your CPF is more than your BRS. All right. But how about which scenario will come to valuation limits? And that's it. That's the max already. Okay. It's when you are buying a HDB unit or private property using bank loan. All right. Remember earlier I mentioned that when you use a bank loan, you cannot do refinancing with HDB loan. That's the first one that you take note of. The second one you have to take note of is this one. This is the one. When the moment you choose to use bank loan, be it for your private property, which you by default you have to, all right, or for your HDB unit, then the maximum cap amount of CPF you can use is 120% of your valuation or purchase price, whichever is lower. All right. Now, if you hit the 120%, which is the withdrawal limit in this scenario here, all right, unfortunately, even if you have a lot of other CPF in your ordinary account, all right, you cannot use it to contribute to the money installment anymore. You have to use cash. Okay, so this two word CPF valuation limit and withdrawal limit is very powerful. Do take note, nah? Okay, in the past, before May 2019, all right, we all are very, very concerned about this 40 years old term lease, whereby let's say your HDB units only balance 60 years, and you start to worry that your property price will drop, your CPF, all these things will become affected, you know. So our PMD during the 2018 National Day rally did mention that he's going to do something with the policymaker. All right, so true enough, during this period on the 10th of May 2019, all right, CPF came up with new policy. Okay, so what is the new policy about? Okay, so we need to know the three things. First, if a home covers you to age 95 and beyond, you will be able to obtain maximum CPF usage and up to 90% of HDB housing loan. All right, and withdraw your CPF above your basic retirement sums from age 55. So that means this is very good. All right, if you hit 95, where you can cover the youngest buyer, that's the best. All right, if your home does not cover you to age 95, what will happen? You can still use your CPF and HDB housing loan, no problem, but will be prorated. All right, so you will not be able to get the maximum cap on it. Okay, now it'll be a bit complicated. Sometimes you say this and that. You may want to try on these two QR code, which will lead you to the respective CPF and HDB website for the calculator. All right, and then you play around with it and understand further. All right. So, but having said this thing, I think an example would be good to illustrate. So, in this scenario, Nick and Cheryl both aged 25. Initially, they plans to buy a four-room resale flat. Okay, with 65 years remaining lease, and because of the 65 years remaining lease, they can only cover them up to the age of 95. Okay, so before the implementations of this new policy in May 2019, all right, they can use 100% of their CPF. All right, and their loan got no issue. They can go up to 90% for the HDB housing loan. But after the implementation, it affects them. How? They can only use up to 90% of the valuation limit. And this HDB loan, they can only goes up to 81%. All right, so unfortunately, this policy affects younger buyer. All right, but on the other hand, it's a good news for this group of family. All right, John 48, Jane 45. Again, they plan to buy a 4-room flat again, resale flat, okay, with a 50 years remaining lease. All right, that can cover them to at least 95 years. So before the implementation of this new policy, what happened? Okay, their maximum CPF usage is only 80%. Okay, their housing loan is only up to 90%. Okay, but after the implementation, it's a good news to them. They can use up to 100% of the valuation limit and 90% to the loan to value. All right, so this is a good news for them. Okay, so I hope this illustration will help you to understand further. Okay, we touched on a bit on the accrued interest. Now we all know the power of accrued interest. All right, I've done a simple chart, but this is just only for illustration. It's not for sharing out to your customer. It's just for your understanding. All right, and it's based on a simple example of buying a HDB 4-room flat, BTO at 300,000. So with the $10,000, with the 10% down payment of $30,000, this buyer, this family will take up a 270,000 housing loan. The monthly installment will be 1224.91 over a period of 12 months. The yearly contribution will be 14,698.92. All right. So if you do a simple chart, all right, this is the purchase price, 300,000. Until when you reach 25 years, your mortgage loan becomes zero. All right, but total CPF you use over the period of 25 years will be this amount. Okay, because of the contributions to your mortgage interest and things like this. But there is a factor of accrued interest that someone might have not come to realize it. Okay, so when you actually want to sell your flat at the age of 25 years, that means the property age 25 years, all right, you check the account of CPF plus accrued interest, you'll be shocked that you got to return almost 568,000. All right, it's very close to your purchase price double. Right? If you can recall, you're buying at 300,000, but when you come to 25th year, when you plan to sell, you're almost paying double. All right, close to 600,000 of just the CPF plus the accrued interest. So this is some good illustration in case you are informing your seller that if you are holding your property for long term, as long as you hold more than 10-15 years, the accrued interest, which is in compound factor, is going to be very killing. All right. What if I'm going to hold up to the 40 years or 50 years? It's going to be worse because it's keep on compounding and compounding. Although you already paid here, everything done. Although you already stopped contribution, your maximum contribution is this amount. All right, over the period of 25 years, stop already. No more contribution of CPF. But the accrued interest is something that will be incremental over the years. All right, it's very powerful. So the longer you hold on to the unit, not selling, the more you have to pay with the accrued interest. All right, of course, some of you may argue, it's my money after all. All right, yep, you're right, nothing wrong with that. All right, would you prefer to have cash or cash? I mean, cash or CPF? It's your thought. Okay. Negative sales. All right, how is it and how it happens? Now let's do a bit of study on this. Okay, what is negative sales? Negative sales is happen when selling price is not sufficient to cover the outstanding loan or to cover the CPF return. Okay, then what will happen? The deposit you receive from buyer must return to HDB before completion. All right, this is what it is. Now, how actually it happens? All right, my understanding, it happens because of two scenarios. All right, wrong entry price, of course, wrong selling price. All right, this happens very, very regularly, especially wrong entry price when customer buy around in 2011 to 2013 period, whereby it's really on the high side. And then subsequently, when the market takes a bit of challenge, they goes the other way around. In period like 2016, 17, 18, when the seller who have acquired the property in 2011, 1213, the HDB property, when they want to sell in 2016, 1718, they realize the price has dropped a lot. All right. So this will result in what? Negative sales. Okay. On the another scenario is that when they have accumulated a lot in the CPF accrued interest over a long period of holding to the unit. That means I've been staying here since day one. I bought, the time was very cheap. I thought now I can sell very high. I can receive a lot of cash. But the sad fact is that you cannot. All right. Why? Because the factor of accrued interest will eat away the cash component. All right. So it might result into negative sales, and usually it will happen. Okay. Okay, this is only for light moment for all of us to realize it, just for information. Now, in all HDB, there's always a HIP 1 and HIP 2. HIP 1 will comes around in 30 years. HIP 2 will comes around in 60 to 70 years of the property, of the HDB unit. All right, this one you may want just to read about it. And of course, there is this thing called VERS. It's not SERS, which is SERS. This is VERS. VERS is more for voluntary. All right, voluntary, which means the owners themselves join together and decide whether they want to go for this en bloc opportunity, but it's still subject to HDB. All right, and it's unlike the SERS. SERS is when by the development board decided that this area needs to be taken away because of maybe they need to do up certain modern items like MRTs and things like this. All right, but the actual facts of VERS is not sorry, excuse me, the actual workout of VERS is not finalized yet, probably because most of the units have not reached 70 years old in Singapore. All right, so it will come eventually, not so soon yet. Okay, I'll come to the last stage right now. It's about how many buying schemes are there. Okay, if you recall my first third slide, there are total 8 buying schemes for resale HDB units. All right, do take note now. The first one is the most common one. We call it the public or family scheme. All right, as long as you have an applicant of 21 years and above, all right, be it SC or SPR, and then you can bring your spouse or children who can be occupier and things like this. This is not a combination. All right, so hypothetically, you will have SC family, which is made up of Singapore citizens and Singapore citizens. Another group made up of Singapore citizens and SPR. This group is also considered as Singapore citizens family. All right, many of you will ask me this question: will this SPR needs to wait for 3 years? The answer is no need. All right, no need. Why? Because this is a SC family group. SC family group. Okay, now when you are under SPR family group, that means both of the applicants are SPR. Then you must make sure they have the validity of at least 3 years for being an SPR. All right. So this is more on public and family, and this is in fact the most general applications scheme. All right. The next common one will be fiancé scheme nowadays because of the BTO delay. Many fiancé scheme will come into the market. All right. So likewise, either one of them must be 21 years and above. All right. So as long as you are 21 years and above, you will be the owner. All right. The one that is below 21 years old got to be occupier. Correct? Because you can't sign any documents when you're above, when you're below 21 years. And all of us must know, as long as you are the occupier, this CPF will not be allowed to use for the contribution to the unit. Okay, so this is something you may have to take note of for fiancé scheme. And please remember also the housing grant I mentioned earlier. Check with DIY buyer if they are under this scheme. Have they applied for any BTO flats and they have exercised but cancelled away due to the longer waiting period? If they have, inform them that have you waited for more than 12 months before you come and buy my unit? All right. If you have not, then ask the next question: are you applying any housing grant? If you are, then I'm afraid to tell you you are not eligible for that. All right. This is something we call it situation awareness. All right. For fiancé scheme, because nowadays it's very common to have them to buy the HDB resale unit. Just take note. Okay, SSC, Single Singapore Citizen Scheme. All right, this scheme works where single Singapore citizens or divorced Singapore citizens aged above 35 years old, or in a scenario whereby it's a widow or an orphan, all right, Singapore citizens above 21 years old. So this scheme don't work just for 35 years and above. Do take note. All right, there are situations whereby the Singapore citizens can qualify even if they are 22 years old, 23 years old, or below 35, so long as they are widow or orphan. All right, and they must be SC, above 21 years old. All right, so I need to correct many of us that SSC scheme is not just for Singapore citizens above 35 years old. This is something you may want to correct, the mindset. Okay. Now, the joint SSC, the word joint means there'll be more than one. All right, but there also we must have a cap. All right, maximum will be 4. All right, any combination of the previous SSC, as long as it's more than 1, is known as joint. But joint, you can have more than 4 altogether. All right, so maximum 4. Okay, and 4 of them, all the 4 of them, okay, have to be owner. You cannot be occupier. All right, which means let's say you have 2 joint single, 3 joint single, 4 joint single coming to buy this HDB unit under buying this scheme. All of them got to be the rightful owner. All right, and the income qualifications when you go for HLE application is based on family income ceilings. Okay, so this is something a bit unique that. All right. Okay, orphan scheme, just now you mentioned, all right, orphan scheme, orphan scheme, all right, orphans is open to Singapore citizens above 21 years old, together with all others unmarried siblings if there's any, all right, but on one condition, one of the deceased parents, it must be a Singapore citizens or a SPR, all right, so this is something you might want to take note when you're serving a buyer who is buying under orphan scheme. Check first thing that their parents, either one of them who have not, they are not around anymore, whether are they Singapore citizens or SPR. This is very important. Okay, so this is how the orphan scheme works. Next thing, non-citizen spouse scheme works, and this scheme is very common nowadays. Let me assure you. All right, it works on 2 scenarios. Let me just show you. First scenario is whereby a Singapore citizens above 21 years old, all right, get into a spouse who is having a visit pass of more than 6 months. This more than 6 months must be valid more than 6 months during your resale application submission. All right, it's not during the time when the OTP is being issued. Okay. On another scenario, if let's say your foreign spouse do not have more than 6 months of travel pass, all right, then what will happen? Okay, if your buyer is Singapore citizens more than 35 years old, no worries. Okay, the spouse to be can be less than 6 months of traveling pass or visit pass. Okay, now this scheme is called the non-citizen spouse scheme. All right. The other one is called the non-citizens family. It works almost similar. All right, it's just that now probably in scenario 1, this child, Singapore citizens above 21 years old, is going to buy a HDB resale unit together with the aged parent who are old, all right, but they have a long-term visit pass to Singapore of at least 6 months and above. All right, scenario 2, SC Singapore father, all right, more than 21 years old, all right, and then they have a son with a long-term visit pass of more than 6 months. Okay, you can do so also. This is called the non-citizens family buying scheme. All right. Now the scheme number 6 and number 7 just now I discussed are pretty coming on very, very popular nowadays. Just take note. Okay, this one is also very common, but not so popular because it depends on your luck. All right. Why? It's called a conversion scheme. Okay. Assuming, let's say you're staying here, this 3-room flat. All right, and your neighbors is selling. Okay, this is called luck already, if your neighbor is selling. Because why? You must have a common wall here, all right, that is being able to merge in your living area, that can break off the wall. The two living area is a common together, all right, and they must be work for HDB 2 room to 3 room, or 3 room to 3 room, or 3 room to 2 rooms. It doesn't work for HDB 4 rooms, all right, which means only for 2 rooms and 3 rooms category, you can convert both your neighbors' unit together when you have a common wall that links the living area together. All right. Another scenario is whereby, for example, you are staying in this corner flat, a 3-room corner flat, for example. Your neighbors here intend to sell away. All right. You can buy over because there is a common wall somewhere around here. All right. Inside it, common wall. All right, and it's a 3-room and 3-room, so they can buy over. But before you enter into option, conversion schemes need HDB prior approval. So you have to go to the branch office, get approval first, and once it's approved, wonderful, then you can go ahead and buy. All right, and once you buy already, in fact, probably this piece of corridor area, you can also buy and become your enclosed area. All right, which is very common in some of the 3 rooms and 3 rooms merged together. You can see in very old estates, a lot of them purchased in under these type of schemes. All right. Okay, last thing need to check is the EIP, ethnic quota, and SPR quota. Now this thing works on the 1st of every month. All right, so every month on the 1st, you have to check on this EIP, SPR, key in the postal code, key in the seller's race and things like this. You just follow through under the HDB inquiry, all right, and understand about who you can sell to and things like this. Please remember, when you enter into the option, this thing is not valid, all right? It's only called valid when upon your resale submission application comes. All right, I repeat again, assuming in August, for example, now, today, 3rd of August, you enter into the option whereby then other races can buy over Chinese unit, all right? But on the 1st of September, you decided to submit resale application. Things change, all right? You don't jump, all right? Because that one will become invalid. Because in August it's valid, but during your application in September it's not valid, then you got problem already, all right? So a word of advice, in case you're having this type of scenario, quickly exercise the option, quickly submit the case first, all right, to avoid a change in the EIP or SPR quota, all right? Okay, I'm done so much with that. Now, a lot of the questions that you had in mind and things like this, you can actually find the answer under this HDB resale portal frequently asked question. All right, I've done a QR code for you, scan it, copy the link somewhere, all right? You will enjoy. I suggest sometimes when you're free, you can just read through. There are a lot of questions inside. I think at least about 70 over to 80 over. And it's very, very relative to our day-to-day work. All right, I believe it's going to be very powerful for all of us. All right. Okay, these slides here, the last 3 slides here is an accumulation of all the policy changes over the last 10 years or 12 years. All right, I put it in so that you can reference back in case you're being questioned on certain policy changes or things like this. You can know when was it done and what happened in brief. Okay, so you have 2, 3, back until 2011 also. All right. So I hope you all like it. And this is a recent those transactions volume over the last 13, 14 years. So in case you're doing some statistic calculation and things like this will be very helpful. All right. So, okay, I'm done with the sharing and I'm going to take on some questions. All right, as I promised. Now, if you have any questions that needs to PM me, my number is already in the chat. But do allow me to have some time to respond. All right, because in the previous class, there's one of them who called me continuously for 6 to 7 missed call over a short period of 5 minutes just to ask me a marketing consent questions. all right, and I'm driving, so it's not very polite lah, for that. Huh? So I don't want this thing to happen among us. Do have some respect sometimes, all right? Okay, let's catch up with some of the question that I saw here. Good morning.